What you're about to witness will restore your faith in justice and in man's best friend. When this defense attorney said those three words, "He's just an animal," he had no idea what was about to happen next. This is the incredible true story of Max, the dog who changed everything. Our story begins in the quiet suburb of Riverside, where 76-year-old Margaret Patterson had lived for over 40 years. Margaret, or Mrs. P as the neighbors called her, was a retired school teacher. But her most loyal companion wasn't a former student. It was Max. Max was a 3-year-old German shepherd she'd rescued from a shelter. He was smart, protective, and incredibly well-trained. Margaret had taught him over 50 commands, but there was one command, one specific trick, that would later become the key to everything. Every morning at 9 a.m., they'd walk to the corner store. Every evening at 6, Margaret would read in her chair while Max laid at her feet. Life was predictable, safe, peaceful. Until the night of October 15th. It was 11:47 p.m. when Margaret heard the sound of breaking glass from her kitchen window. Max immediately began barking. Margaret, still in her nightgown, grabbed her phone and dialed 911. But she never got to finish that call. The intruder wore a black ski mask and gloves. He demanded money, jewelry, anything valuable. But when Margaret moved too slowly, he became violent. Max lunged at the attacker, trying to protect his owner. The intruder kicked him hard, sending Max sliding across the floor. But in that moment, something happened that the criminal didn't realize. In his panic, the intruder did something specific, something that would haunt him. He grabbed Margaret's walking cane to threaten her, and he tapped it 3 times on the floor. Tap, 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 while shouting, "Sit, S-T-A-Y." Max, trained to respond to commands, hesitated, and in those crucial seconds, the intruder grabbed Margaret's jewelry box and cash, then fled into the night. Police arrived within minutes. Margaret was rushed to the hospital with a concussion and broken wrist. She'd survive, but the emotional trauma ran deep. Detective Sarah Chen was assigned to the case. A 15-year veteran, she'd seen hundreds of home invasions, but this one was different. Detectives collected fingerprints, but the gloves left nothing. They found shoe prints, size 11, common brand. They had the broken window, the missing items, but no solid leads. What they did have was a witness, a 4-legged witness who'd seen everything. For 3 weeks, the case went cold, then a break. A pawn shop owner reported someone trying to sell jewelry matching the description of Margaret's stolen pieces. The seller? A 32-year-old man named Derek Morrison, who had a record for burglary. Morrison lived just 4 blocks from Margaret's house. He matched the build of the intruder. And his shoe size? Size 11. He was arrested on November 8th, but Morrison had a story ready. Without physical evidence tying him directly to the scene, the DA knew this case would be tough. They had circumstantial evidence, and they had Max. What happened next would shock the entire legal system. If you're watching this story, then you understand that animals love fiercely, remember deeply, and stand by us long after the world has moved on. Max never let go of what he witnessed, and that devotion would soon change everything. Please subscribe to The Pawnicle. Every new subscriber helps us tell more stories where loyalty holds the line and where love quietly becomes evidence no courtroom can ignore. Now let's follow Max into the next chapter. Assistant District Attorney Marcus Webb had an unusual idea. What if Max could testify? The defense attorney, Richard Blackwell, was a seasoned lawyer known for his aggressive tactics. When he heard the prosecution wanted to bring a dog to trial, he laughed. The judge, Honorable Patricia Reeves, was skeptical but fair. She agreed to allow Max in the courtroom, but only as a companion for the traumatized Mrs. Patterson, not as a witness. The prosecution had a plan. They just needed the right moment. January 12th, the trial of Derek Morrison began. Margaret testified first. With Max sitting quietly beside her, she recounted that horrible night, the breaking glass, the masked intruder, the violence. The defense's strategy was simple: create reasonable doubt. Morrison never denied being at the pawn shop, but he maintained his story about buying the jewelry from a stranger. The evidence was presented, the jewelry, the window, the medical reports, but without a positive ID, the case was shaky. Then came the moment that changed everything. On day 3 of the trial, Derek Morrison took the stand. It was a risky move, but his attorney was confident. Morrison repeated his story. He'd bought the jewelry from a stranger. He'd never been near Margaret's house. He was innocent. Throughout his testimony, Max remained calm beside Margaret in the front row. But something was different. Max's ears were up. His eyes were locked on Morrison. Detective Chen noticed it. Ada Webb noticed it. Max recognized something. What happened next would be replayed on news stations around the world. Ada Webb picked up an item from the evidence table. Margaret's wooden walking cane. Webb walked toward Morrison with the cane. And then, standing directly in front of the defendant, he did it. 3 sharp taps on the floor. Tap, tap, tap. Morrison's face went pale. And then, Max erupted. The calm, well-trained dog began barking ferociously. But only at Morrison. Not at the prosecutor. Not at anyone else in that courtroom. Only at the defendant. Those words, "He's just an animal," would become infamous. Max heard that exact pattern on the night of the attack. The intruder tapped Mrs. Patterson's cane 3 times while commanding Max to stay. The defendant just recognized it, and so did Max. But Webb wasn't done. Morrison's hands trembled. Sweat formed on his forehead. The entire courtroom held its breath. Morrison refused, looking away. The trial concluded 2 days later. In his closing argument, Ada Webb didn't rely solely on Max's reaction, but combined with the jewelry, the timeline, and Morrison's suspicious behavior on the stand, it was enough. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Morrison was sentenced to 12 years in prison, but the story doesn't end there. The case made international headlines. Legal experts debated whether animal behavior could be considered evidence. Some called it groundbreaking, others called it controversial. But for Margaret Patterson, it was simply justice. Max had protected her that night, and he'd protected her again in that courtroom. Today, Margaret is 78. She still lives in her home in Riverside. And Max? He's now 5 years old, still by her side every single day. The city honored him with a special medal for bravery. As for Richard Blackwell, the defense attorney who said Max was just an animal, he reportedly adopted a rescue dog 6 months after the trial. This case proved something powerful, that loyalty can't be cross-examined, that truth has many voices, and that sometimes man's best friend is also justice's best witness. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories. Share this video with every dog lover you know. And remember, animals may not speak our language, but they understand more than we'll ever know.